A few years ago, probably about 7 or 8 years ago, all the major Hollywood studios got together and said, how are we going to make digital cinema work? And that's how 3D became so popular lately, is via digital cinema. And they were called the Digital Cinema Initiatives, and they came up with the kind of template of how we work today. And a main part of that was encryption. So these 5 main areas are really what I'm going to focus on today. I'm going to touch on each one in turn, but really, when you release a film and your OV is finished, and the amount of work and effort and everything that goes into creating that final piece of content, it then comes to us, and we will do sometimes up to 100 different mastered versions of this film. The German subtitled, German dubbed, French subtitled, French dubbed, all across Europe, Middle East and Africa. And it's quite an intense process because it's a lot of data you're dealing with. In its raw form, a 3D feature is about, 2K, it's about 3.5 terabytes worth of data. When it's compressed down to a DCP, it's about 200 gig. But if you imagine you're doing 100 versions, you've got to localize this film, you've got to QC it, you've got to make sure it works and distribute this content. And to do that over 100 different versions to 60-odd territories, you would consider that you would have a fair amount of time to do that, but unfortunately, you don't. We have about 10 to 21 days, if we're lucky, to do that entire process. So we have quite a lot of infrastructure at our building. Just in the digital cinema department for mastering and distribution, we have about 80 staff, and we just literally get the content in, localize it, be as faithful as we can to the original version, and then distribute it. So, here's a very crude drawing, so excuse me for the crudeness of this. This is just a very basic workflow of what we do at DDL, and it's split down into different areas, and I'll focus on each area in turn. So, this is how we receive the content. Now, you'll notice there I've got a tape, I've got a hard drive, and I've got a network cable. That's basically the 3 ways in which we can receive the content. It's data, it's files, it can be delivered on a hard drive, it can come in on LTO tape. But what's currently happening now is a lot of the content is delivered electronically. And Deluxe own their own fibre network throughout the globe, and we connect all the Deluxe facilities together. It also hooks into the major Hollywood studios, it hooks into post houses, it hooks into dubbing stages all over the world, so we can move this content around really quickly. Because once the film is finished and you've only got maximum of 3 weeks to make all these versions and distribute them, you need to move that content around very, very quickly. So the next stage is we have a department called content preparation. When we receive the OV into the building via Deluxe Express, of course it's QC'd and made sure everything has arrived intact. That's the job of the content preparation department. But they also have a number of other responsibilities as well. Apart from the quality control of the received images, they also prepare the image files for each department. Now, we might receive DPXs because you can also release 3D content on 35mm print. It would be their responsibility to transcode that content for use in various departments. So they would transcode into DCDMs, which is the raw format for digital cinema. They would also transcode into ProRes files ready for broadcast. So effectively what we do is we receive this raw data in, we localize it, and then we distribute it in all different forms. And that's all done through the content preparation department. We check that all Texas material has been delivered okay. I'll be showing you a clip in a while about how we localize the content, or more the end result of how we localize the content. So we usually work on Texas backgrounds so we can recreate the main title and any on-screen text as faithfully to the original as we can. They also check all the audio has been delivered correctly and to DCI specification. They check the French dub, the German dub, they replay it, make sure there's no dropouts, make sure everything's as it should be. And then they create in-house proxies and quick times for all the different departments to use, like subtitling or DFX for reference. They also check for any internal corruptions that may have been introduced. I think the best way to say is they're like the funnel. Everything comes in through them, and they make sure that everything is okay, ready for the rest of the departments to work. So here we've got Avatar and Abatap. Abatap is Avatar in Russian. And I'm going to play a clip now of a showreel of how we localise the content. So if you'd all like to put your 3D glasses on, and Andy, if you could play clip 1, please. Because of the nature of our business, we tend to work on about between 80 and 100 different feature films a year. Russ and his team, who basically do all that fantastic work very, very hard and very long hours. And I think I can safely say that we try to keep as faithful to the original version as possible, which is very, very important. If you're making a film, you want to try and get your message across into every territory as you originally intended. So the next part we do at Deluxe Digital, which is quite a big part of our business, is 3D subtitling. About 5 years ago, Warner Brothers released a film, Beowulf, and they came to us, and they had difficulty in trying to localise this feature because it was 3D. I'm sure, well, some of you may or may not know about eye strain, that if you have extreme divergence or convergence happening quickly, the muscles in your eyes have to accommodate this really, really, really quickly. And a great test to do, if you bear with me, is if you put your finger up in front of your eye about 10 inches, and then you look at your finger, and then you focus on the wall, and then you look at your finger again, then back on the wall. That muscular movement in your eyes is what's happening when you're focusing on 3D. Now, what we found with 3D subtitling, or what Warner's found with 3D subtitling, that if you just put the subtitles on the screen plane as if they were 2D, and the action's coming out at you, sorry, I keep on moving away from the mics, and the action's coming out at you, then you're focusing on this action here, then you're going to focus back down on the subtitle, then back on the action, then back on the subtitle, and that can actually make people feel quite ill if you're doing that for up to 2 hours. So we came up with a solution where you actually dynamically move the subtitles with the action, and that's a render process. So we have to initially map the subtitles on the background. That can take about 3 days to do the original pass, to make sure that the subtitles are in the correct plane, to make sure there's no eye strain, and to make sure it's sympathetic to the background as well. You don't just want to stick subtitles way out front, you want it to move with it. And these subtitles can actually move around quite quickly and be quite dynamic, but when you've got your glasses on, you won't see them move at all, or hopefully you won't see them move at all. They're just there to be read and not impact the feature at all. So the way in which we do that, we receive the content on hard drive, we load it into a replay server, and then at that point where there's the blue and the red arrow, we cut into the image stream, and we have our own software called Babel, and it's at that point, via using keyers, we key in the subtitles over the top of the DCP, and we are able to map these subtitles to the action on the background. Now, we always urge that production come along and attend these sessions, these original sessions. We've just recently been working with Lightstorm on Titanic. We work with them on Avatar. We have Blue Sky come in from the Ice Age people, and they always come in and they do the initial placement. Mainly, I think that's very, very important to get production sign-off, because you don't, if you do your 3D subtitles badly, it can actually damage the film. So, a little screenshot there of the software. Sorry, it's not very easy to read, but on the left you've got your subtitle in and out point, and then over on the right you've got your dynamic field, which enables the subtitle to move in real time, and then you've got your X, Y, and Z axes, which actually picks where it is in the 3D field. Now those settings are saved after we've done our OV placement, and then that enables us to load the other languages afterwards, so we can then do the French or the German or the Italian, keeping those settings together. So I think probably the best thing to do now is to play clip 3. What we're going to do is play it twice. I need you to put your 3D glasses on for the first time round. It's two 20-second sections from underworld. One's a Portuguese version, one's a French Arabic version. And if you wear your wear your subtitles, wear your glasses, then you'll be able to see them in hopefully very nice 3D, and it won't impact the background at all. The second time we play it, if you could just take your glasses off, and then you'll see very subtle movements in the ocular offset of the subtitles, and then you'll understand how we make the placements and follow the image. So if we could run clip 3, that'd be great. Okay, a little bit about mastering now. Now we've actually got DFX. They've localized all the main titles. We've also got all the subtitles made and generated. We now need to actually make the DCPs. So seeing as we're just talking about subtitling, here's very briefly, our 3D subtitle mastering process. We have our OV version on the left, in the box with the left and right eye. And we also have the subtitle file we created with the relevant graphics associated to that. We've worked very closely with DVS on their Clipster and Fuse software and hardware to write in a kind of extensible markup document that enables us just to input a control file and a relevant subtitle file, and we can render out, and it does all the mapping from our original sessions. So effectively, we bake in the subtitles, we compress to JPEG 2000, ready for the DCP, and we interleave the streams all in one pass. Doesn't sound very interesting, but this enables us to get the volume out the door. If we're doing 30 or 40 subtitle versions that need to be done in 2 or 3 days, we've got to have a lot of capacity. So this enables us to render out at about 100 frames a second. This is a very brief overview. I won't stay on this too long. This is how you make a standard 3D DCP. You have your 3D DCDM files and your audio files. You compress the data. You then MXF wrap and encrypt those JPEG streams. And that's the important part, the encryption. That keeps it very secure. You then create the DCP. And when you create a DCP, you create your system and your control files that allow the replay server to play back the feature exactly as was intended. So it essentially takes your 6 reels of film, splices them together, tapes them up, and runs them through the projector. That's what the control files do. We then make a key to be able to QC the content. Once it's technically approved, and more importantly, client approved, we then duplicate and distribute the content. So, on to distribution. How do we get this content out there? Well, there's a number of different mechanisms, but here's a very, very simple workflow diagram. The content booking is essentially the client. We give them whoever we master DCPs for, we give them the ability to book a site in Europe with their content. That order then comes into us. We then reference what we call our TDL, which is our trusted device list. As I said, that's a list of every single piece of equipment out there in digital cinema world at the moment. We then use various mechanisms and partners to deliver this content. It could be via hard drive, on a van to the cinema, or it could be electronically delivered via satellite or via fibre. Just a brief show of the map of the deluxe world over Europe. We have various partners and offices throughout the whole of EMEA, Europe, Middle East and Africa, and they are all responsible for delivering to various places. Once the mastered version is complete, let's say the German subtitled, we would then send that across to our German office or our German partner. They would then clone and distribute. The whole point here is to keep the timing down as quick as possible. You really have no time at all at the end delivery, literally 10 days sometimes to deliver to the whole of Europe. So this is the electronic landscape as it stands at the moment. Currently there's about 6,500 sites in Europe, Middle East and Africa that can replay digital cinema and can therefore replay 3D content. Currently about 1,200 of those can receive the content electronically, so that's just a map of what's going on in Europe at the moment. I mentioned about encryption. we have a tool called Alchemy. That's what generates our keys. Now, this is a huge part of the business for us, not financially, but actually operationally. Over the past 12 months, we have made 8 million keys for replay of cinema content, and managing all of that, and managing that in the realms of a distribution and when release dates, and you can't unlock the content before the actual release date for security reasons. That's a huge thing we have to deal with. So Alchemy is a very powerful tool for us. It enables us to keep the content in the cinema, but not able to be played until release date, effectively. So here's a little snapshot of the versions we have to do. As you see, historically, the dub versions are France, Russia, Italy, Germany, and Spain. And then we have a whole slurry of subtitled versions. Now, to put it into context, when we did Avatar, it was 3 years ago now, we did over 100 individual masters. Now, on average, we'll do between at least 60 or 80, and that's going to increase even more, because at the end of the year, you're going to get high frame rate. You're going to get The Hobbit. It's coming out at 48 frames 3D, so that's 96 frames a second. That has all kinds of operational impact for us. It doubles the size of everything. And also, it literally doubles the inventory, because you'll need to deliver Hobbit as classic 24-frame 3D, as 2D, as high frame rate 3D, in subtitled, dubbed, all these different languages. It just exponentially increases. So it's not a very glamorous end of the business, but it's a very important end of the business. If we don't get this content out on screen in time for release date, then the huge amounts of money spent on this film can be lost, because a lot of your content needs to be seen over the opening weekend. That's when all the marketing is aimed for. That's when all the talent has flown all around the world, done all the interviews, all the premieres are all set up for that day. And really, production is given as much time as it needs to finish the film, because that's the creative part of the process. That's where the real kind of creative skill set is. And what happens is our time to deliver becomes smaller and smaller and smaller as they're given more and more time to complete these films. So we feel we do a very good job. We're one of a few companies that do this throughout the world, and that's it. Has anybody got any questions? Very kind. Thank you very much. Yes.
Hi. What's the proportion between satellite delivery currently and the physical delivery of hard drives? And do you see that changing at all in the future?
It's a good question. It's about, in EMEA, which I'm responsible for, it's about 1,000 to about 1,100 sites have satellite capabilities for receiving content, but that's across a few different vendors. It's a viable option. I think the problem we have in Europe is there's so many different languages within a footprint that the beauty of satellite is it's a broadcast model, so you broadcast one version to as many people as you can. What happens in Europe is you want 500 of the German version in Germany, you want 300 of the Italian version in Italy, so it kind of limits the economy of scale. In America, it works exceptionally well. You're hitting 6,000 sites, all with the OV. So there's a number of other things that are being developed in Europe at the moment. There's fibre delivery, which gives you a lot more flexibility. You can deliver to individual sites, individual versions, far easier than you can with satellite. But it's currently at about 18–19% of the install base has that capability. Yes.
Do you have a problem with ghosting with the subtitles, especially when they move so far forwards and backwards in space?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Ghosting on the subtitles, especially white lettering against the black background.
Ghosting. Well, not really, because we don't ever do pure white subtitles. It's down to production to choose, but at the start of every project, we will work with production, and they will have their own ideas of how to avoid that, we found a 90% white, 10% black, so there's like a slight grey, reduces ghosting significantly. We do quite a heavy feather edge and drop shadow. That kind of like minimises the effect of ghosting as well. But yes, it does happen, and I think all we can do is try and limit it as much as possible. And using different colours can help as well.
Can you predict when it's going to happen in different countries with different projectors and different types of screen? And do you know where you're going to have problems in advance?
Through experience, yes, we know where we're going to have problems, but we've actually built quite a knowledge base over the years of trial and error, because a lot of digital cinema was trial and error. A lot of people released hardware and software that would work perfectly as long as it was delivered in a specific way. So we found over time a kind of way that worked, and it was a bit convoluted, but we found a way that worked, and now it's quite mature, and it's quite easy to deliver digital cinema packages. Yes.
Hello. Does censorship play an interruption? I mean, create an interruption in your delivery? So when you're, a German version or an Italian version or a Greek version or a Turkish version, how does this interplay with your distribution?
Yes, you're right. It can do. Usually the larger of the territories, like Germany, Italy and Spain, they've already gone through censorship, so we know what edits to make when we receive the data in advance. Or on some occasions, those edits are already made and we receive specific cuts. Where it is a real problem is the UAE, Kuwait, Qatar, where the way they censor their product is you deliver the finished DCP, it then goes to their censorship and they then decide what's going to be cut out. You then do the cuts, send it back, and then it goes to the official body. And that can be very frustrating, because you tend to send a lot of versions out to the territory, and yes, that takes it absolutely to the wire. The way we've got around that recently is we can do what we call supplementary packages. We can send, for example, the French-Arabic version out there with the burnt-in subtitles, and then we can send a little top-up file that says, OK, don't play the whole of Reel 1, play Reel 1 for a minute, drop out for 10 seconds, then play again to the end of the reel. So we can send out these, and we're trying to mitigate that, but you're absolutely right, that is an issue, especially with these timescales. And it has been that we've had clients that overcut the picture to compensate for this. But we're trying to work with them to find a much better solution.